Hey guys, it's Megan Aller, Sales Executive with First American Title here in Denver, Colorado with your weekly market update. On Wednesday, this week I'm going to talk about the February market recap for attached single family. There's been a lot of conversation about shift in our marketplace over the last few months, and it's important that when we talk about shift that we really isolate where it's coming down to, and I think that a lot of the shift that we're experiencing happens to be in the attached market. As a reminder, my report only talks about the 7 Metro Denver counties. They're great reports put out by DMAR and RE Colorado. I encourage you to review those reports as well, but we're not going to line up perfectly because we cover different geographies, okay? So when we're talking about the attached market, please keep in mind that about 18 to 24 months ago, there was resolution to builder defect laws, which made it very difficult for builders to develop attached dwellings, condos, townhomes, whatnot, here in Metro Denver. Now, with that resolution to builder defect laws 18 to 24 months ago, now we've had enough time for those builders to break ground and have completed projects that they've now brought forth to the market. Now that we have those new units that we're competing against in the resale market, we're starting to see some of the effects of what it means having more inventory available in that market. Now, the point of looking at the attached market separately is, again, that's where the bulk of the shift is that we're looking in our market. Now, when we talk about shift, my concern is I don't want buyers to think that the market is changing from a seller's market to a buyer's market. There are varying shades of shift that we look at in between, and we would classify the attached single family market as a slightly less good seller's market. I know it's a super technical term, but that's a better explanation than trying to say that there's a lot of shift that's happening in that particular market. Now, active inventory is the biggest determining factor as to whether or not we're experiencing shift in our market for attached single family. So active units came up again in February, and we had 1,704 active units for sale. That represents a 38% increase from where we were 1 year ago, and we've consistently been up by about a third for the last 4 or 5 months in a row. Okay, so it looks like that inventory is around now to stay, and inventory is likely to continue to gain as that first wave of new construction units are coming to market. So basic fundamental economic principles, if supply is going up and demand is staying relatively consistent, that means that prices start to soften just a little bit. And when we say soften, it means less of a sharp increase in our marketplace. And prices actually held pretty constant as we were going into February. So going from January to February, they remained relatively flat. Technically, they were down 0.3%, down to $344,000. When we look at it year over year, we were up by 1.3% to $292,000 for a median sales price. Average days on market sat around 34, which is still historically a very quick sale, considering at the peak of our market when we had distressed properties selling, average days to contract was 120 back in 2006. Now, when we're looking at close to list price ratios, those popped up nicely as we start to enter into a lighter compression phase for attached single family, where we came into 99.1% of their last asking price. So we are seeing quickly that the opportunity for the negotiation period or buyers to have negotiating power at the bookends of the year being January, February, and then again, not until October, November, December, that's starting to decline, and we do have a more competitive market going into spring. Flash sales, or the number of units that were under contract in 7 days or less, popped up to almost 40% of those attached dwellings were under contract in that first 7-day period, and 53% of condos that sold last month sold for at or over their asking price. So back to our market activity graph that we look at every single month, and again, going from a cooler season being winter months with less sales activity into spring, which is really the heat of our market, it's important that we look at those year-over-year sales trends so that we have an accurate idea of how this year shapes up to previous years. And lo and behold, there is that extra supply where we're up 38% year-over-year. Now, under contract activity, while it is up year over year, we had 9.7% increase in the number of contracts that were written last year. Contract activity isn't rising at the same rate as our supply is, and so that means that prices won't rise as fast. Now, the good news about having some of that excess inventory in our market that we haven't had for the last 6 years is that we might be able to finally start servicing some of that pent-up demand that has existed for the last 6 years in this extreme seller's market. So 2019 could could actually represent more closed transactions due to increased inventory. Looking at our compression graph, trying to predict what's going to happen into 2019, again, dashed lines represent projections while solid lines represent those actual numbers coming in. And this one does look different than the detached market graphs that I showed you guys last week. Now, when we're looking at this, again, blue is active, yellow is under contract, red is closed, and all variables are up, again, due to that increased inventory. But our active inventory is up more so than what we expected for those under contract units, so we won't quite see prices rising as fast as we have in years past. Now, again, that doesn't mean that we're shifting to a buyer's market. It just means that it's a slightly less good seller's market going into 2019. Average prices came down just a hair from where we thought we would be. I thought we'd be closer to $349,000. We came in at $344,000, which is still an excellent sales price, and we expect to see that number accelerate over the next 2 to 3 months, probably getting closer to that $360,000 average sales price by the time that we get into those summer months. Average days on market also start to decline pretty drastically as we go into these spring months. As of right now, it was about 34 average days to contract. Looking forward into May and June, we're looking at about 3 weeks to contract on average. So buyers, heed my warning, the market's speeding up very nicely. Finally, looking at February, we had about 38% of those units come in under contract in 7 days or less. As we get to April and May, it's likely to be 6 out of 10 homes will sell in that first weekend. So it's speeding up. We're expecting it to be another compressed cycle for the attached Metro Denver market, but again, a slightly less good seller's market due to increased inventory. Thanks again for tuning in this week, as you do every Wednesday at 10 o'clock for my Greater Metro Denver Market Review. I hope that you'll stay tuned next week. We'll be talking about how many units would we need to have a balanced, a normal, or an average market in Metro Denver, and how close we are to getting if we're in bubble territory. Now, I hope that you will shoot me an email or give me a call if you'd like to get a copy of my slide deck. Everything is across the bottom of the page. Again, I hope that if I'm able to help you better advise your buyers and sellers, that we'll get to meet them at our closing tables. We'll see you soon.